It engages, actually. I've been watching a lot of Soviet film and Russian movies, and I think whether it's Russian films or even Russian literature, engages with moral questions much more directly than I think North Americans do anymore. And I think the great moral questions seem somehow less pressing or vital to North American writers than I think they do to certainly Russian writers, or maybe still European writers. I'm not sure. But you know, the book that I'm writing, the main question, which I think really is, to my mind, the question, is a question of morality, and why are some people highly principled, and what makes them do this, and why are most people not highly principled, and can we answer this question, and can we, by looking at two people who have, in a certain circumstance, behaved very differently, behaved, diametrically differently. Why has one chosen to be this way, if we can say it's even a choice, and why has one behaved the other way? And what can we derive from that? And that, to me, is fascinating. I think we live in a time where there's a lot of talk of moral relativism, where these things, perhaps you can't, it seems naive to talk about it. But to me, I think it's the question. And I think it's naive not to talk about it, or sort of nihilistic in a dangerous way. I mean, we see some of these questions in the free world as well. So questions of big historical movements that, impact, where history impacts people intimately and individually, where you can't but participate, you have to choose, right? And so in the free world, you see instances of that, mostly with Samuel, right? Because you can't take a neutral position. And today we live in a time where people can take a neutral position and can focus on things that seem quite frivolous with no consequence, other than perhaps an existential sort of consequence of the soul. But there were times and places where you have to make moral decisions, and you have to take a stand, and you can't not. And we see this in the world right now. Anywhere there's a revolution, ultimately you're forced to choose, and then you're forced to confront what sort of person you really are. And I guess those of us living in the West right now have the luxury of not having to confront that choice. But the choice exists, and at some point, if it so happens, if you're, I guess, so fortunate or unfortunate, it depends, you may be faced with a moral choice that is, absolutely vital, and you learn who you really are.